In this lesson, we'll look at the core functions and processes of digital archives. The main functions of any archives worldwide are rather straightforward. In short, any archive must ensure that data can be transferred to the archive, that the data which is transferred to the archive is sufficiently described to allow for later discovery and access, that the data and metadata are preserved in an appropriate manner, and ultimately that data and metadata can be searched for and delivered to users in an appropriate manner. The most widely used model to describe the functions and processes of an archive is the OAIS, the reference model for an Open Archival Information System. OAIS was first developed in 2002 and became an ISO standard in 2003. It's called now ISO 14721. The standard was also slightly updated in 2012. According to OAIS, there are 6 core functions of a digital archive: ingest, data management, archival storage, access, administration, and preservation planning. The role of the ingest function is to receive submissions, ensure that the submissions can be effectively preserved, and ultimately placed into long-term storage. According to OAIS terminology, the submissions consist of one or many SIPs, submission information packages, which include all necessary data and metadata to understand the content of the submission. After the archives receive the SIP, these are first checked for their quality. Is the submitted data in formats which are fit for preservation? Is metadata correct and sufficient? Is the submission free of viruses? And so on. If necessary, the archive migrates files into more suitable formats, creates additional metadata, or undertakes any other tasks necessary to raise the quality of the submission. In the case of major problems, the archive can also request an update of the SIP and a resubmission by the original producer. If the SIP is decided to be of sufficient quality, it is reformatted into an AIP, an archival information package, which is then forwarded to the archival storage function for long-term preservation. At the same time, crucial metadata needed to manage and access the AIP is extracted and forwarded to the data management function. The next big OAIS function is the archival storage. The role of the archival storage function is to receive AIPs from the ingest, make sure that the AIPs are stored according to the archive storage policies, and can be provided to the access functionality if requested. The core of the archival storage function is the preservation media. At any point in time, the archive must ensure that sufficient storage capacity is available and that the media used for storage is accessible and readable. As usual, also for all other information systems, this includes the setup of backup regimes, disaster recovery methods, regular error checking, and mechanisms which allow to easily replace media in case of errors or because of the uptake of new preservation hardware and media. In practice, most digital archives nowadays use also rather a lot of duplication. AIPs are often duplicated into multiple locations and onto different types of media to ensure that the data is really preserved and accessible for the decades and generations to come. The next large function described by the OAIS model is data management. The role of the data management function is to receive descriptive information from the ingest function and to place it into a database, which can then be used to perform queries for the users of the archives or generate reports necessary for the daily administration of the archive. It is also important to note that the data management function is directly connected to the archival storage function. All the descriptions about the locations, amount of duplicates, and technical characteristics of the AIPs are also stored in the data management database. Especially the availability of such data makes it possible to manage an archive effectively, decide when digital preservation tasks are necessary to be executed on the AIPs, and ultimately carry out these digital preservation tasks. The next function, administration, is mainly about monitoring the operation of the ingest, data management, archival storage, and access functions, and if necessary, updating the requirements and workflows to be more effective and user-friendly. This means that all other functions send frequent reports and statistics to the administration function, which are then combined, analyzed, compared, as an example, to the budget situation of the archive, and ultimately used for high-level decision-making. Technically, the administration function relies in most cases on a reporting engine, which is used as appropriate by the management and digital preservation specialists of an archive. Within administration is a highly important sub-function called preservation planning. While all the other tasks in administration are concerned about the internal operations of the archival system, then preservation planning is more concerned about monitoring external processes. Experts in an archive carry out constant monitoring of technology. They look at which new file formats and media are emerging, which old ones are being neglected by their developers, which preservation risks are associated to specific media and file formats, and so on. At the same time, also the users are being monitored. What kind of data and in which formats is most required by the users of the archive? What kind of metadata is needed to understand the content, etc. Ultimately, the information from these two monitoring activities, as well as statistics received from administration, are combined into recommendations about changing the structures of the information packages, changing which file formats are accepted by the archives, and which metadata standards are used. Most importantly, the preservation planning functions tells to other functions when it's time to carry out digital preservation tasks, and ultimately how to save the content for the coming generations. The final function of the OAIS model is access. The role of access is to ensure that all users of the archive, called consumers in OAIS, receive the information they want in a way that is understandable and reusable to them. As such, the access function operates pretty much the same way as any other search engine. It receives requests for information, delivers queries to the data management database, and receives the appropriate AIPs and descriptive information as the response. The AIPs and descriptive information are then reformatted into a DIP, a dissemination information package, which is then delivered to the consumer. Now, getting back to the high-level view of OAIS, let us summarize everything by looking at the full workflow from ingest to access. The archives first receive a submission information package from an agency or individual. The package is controlled for its quality, formatted into an archival information package, and placed into archival storage. At the same time, crucial metadata about the package is also placed into the data management database. And now, as years pass, constant monitoring of the digital archive system and the external world is taking place within the administration and preservation planning processes. Let's assume that at one point it is discovered that out of the file format stored in the archival information package, some were not supported by new software products anymore. The preservation planning team decides that it is reasonable to execute a migration process and migrate all files in the old file format into a new one. The appropriate files are found thanks to the information in the data management database. The IPs are called from archival storage. Files are being migrated, packaged into new AIPs, and put back to the archival storage. Ultimately, at any point in time, either before or after the migration process, the consumers are able to query and order information and will receive the dissemination information package, which includes data in formats which is sufficiently simple to use and enrich with metadata, and ultimately allows the users at any time to get the content in an understandable and executable way. That much about OAIS. But last but not least in this lesson, I would highlight two additional functions which are not present in the OAIS model, as these are not necessarily implemented by the archives, but the producer, the agency or individual which is producing the content to be preserved. First one is called appraisal. Appraisal is the function which determines which parts of data need to be archived at all and which not. Nowadays, most institutions apply macro-appraisal techniques. The archivist in charge of making the appraisal decision looks at the overall scope of information in the institution and decides which types of data are worthy of preservation and which not. After the decision has been made, the agency can continue to implement appropriate transfer policies and requirements into appropriate information systems. Second is pre-ingest, the process of creating submission information packages by the producer. Especially in situations where large amounts of data are transferred to the archive at once, it is crucial to streamline the process of exporting content from source systems, enriching it with metadata, and packaging into correct information packages. As with OAIS, there is an ISO standard available describing some details of the pre-ingest process, ISO 20214, Producer Archive Interface Specification.